Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of What I Watched this month's September edition. Strap in because it's gonna be a long one. I started this month with Blue Sun Palace. This is a debut feature about two Chinese migrants working at a massage parlor in Queens, and beyond having Li Kangsheng in the film, this shares a lot of similarities to the films of Tsai Ming-Liang, especially in its slow, single-shot coverage approach. It's a gentle one with a devastating tragedy at the center of it that gives this whole thing a really isolating feel. Really enjoyed this, definitely one of the most confident directorial debuts I've seen in recent years. Definitely check it out. And I watched Sorry Baby. Speaking of confident debuts, man, I love indies like this, where it feels like such an authentic point of view from the writer, director, and star. You can tell how comfortable Ava Victor is both in front of and behind the camera, which allows them to go to some really dark and authentic places with this. It's stripped back, it's honest, it's never overly sentimental, and it's even pretty funny. I will say the only thing holding this back for me was I didn't think the humor was always working in the film's favor. The film would often go to some really intense and uncomfortable places, and oftentimes they would use humor to deflect the intensity, which I get is the film's way of disarming the viewer in a way, making these common situations feel comfortable and less lonely as a means of better understanding these experiences. But more often than not, I just felt more frustrated than charmed. All that said though, good to see Lucas Hedges in a movie again. We missed you. Then I watched Honey Don't, and I didn't hate this. This is not a great movie, don't get me wrong, but I do feel the reactions to this have been just a bit extreme. Obviously, it's not on par with even the worst Coen Brothers movies. There's a severe sense of disposability here, and coming from a pair as consistent as the Coens, I was surprised at how convoluted and cheap the narrative felt. If you were to ask me what happened in this movie, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. But it was fun, it was silly, and even the corniness and horniness felt kinda harmless and borderline charming to me. Margaret Qualley is significantly better here than she was in Drive Away Dolls. Maybe this is just because I saw this on the big screen, but I thought this looked a lot better than Drive Away Dolls. There are also some recognizable Coenisms in here, like the minor cartoonish characters that pop in and out. I don't know, for what this is, a lesbian crime B-movie, I had a pretty decent time with it. That said, let's not do this forever. Let's lock back in eventually, right? Then I watched Gumo. Long time coming with this one. I've been low-key a little scared to hop into this for years, given its reputation as being one of the edgiest films out there. But having finally made the leap, I gotta say this was a lot sadder than it was disturbing. The most shocking thing about Gumo is the fact that Harmony Korine managed to make a film so tender that it nearly moved me to tears. Yes, the film is trying to provoke and disturb you, but it also, to me, felt like a bit of a test on the audience. It doesn't feel unaware at how blunt it is with its edginess. What I mean is, I found it to be pretty tender and curious in its exploration of this community and the people within it. The film is certainly funny, but it also has a clear sense of empathy and love for these people. It celebrates their small wins every chance it gets. And it does focus much more on the connections within the community than it does the ugliness. It wants you to feel closer to them, and at times feels like it's asking you, even in this town's ugliest and most broken moments, can these characters still be loved and seen as people? The reputation this film has gained over the years has just proven its point in many ways, that there's a closed-mindedness to the way we see each other, where we'd rather look away and pretend something doesn't exist than to confront it head on and try to understand it. It's not trying to argue for a lot of the disturbing things that happen here. It's just getting closer to the characters in a way not a lot of films are willing to get. You get a full portrait in the process, something that's oftentimes hilarious, tragic, disturbing, and again, tender. In my opinion, this is a very beautiful movie. Then I watched Escape from New York. Damn, dude, it's been a minute since I've hopped into a John Carpenter movie, and boy, did I miss it. As usual, it's kind of a hard one to put a finger on. I wouldn't call this a horror movie. I wouldn't call it an action movie. Wouldn't even call it a sci-fi movie. I also wouldn't call it a straight-up disaster movie. It exists in its own lane tonally, and completely hits it out of the park in that lane. Very moody, has a thick 80s feel. Do wish Snake was a bit more interesting as a lead, as cool as he is. Honestly, he kind of gets kicked around most of the movie. He was barely the man for the job. But yeah, great time, and if you haven't seen it, definitely worth checking out. Then I rewatched The Swimmer. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it truly never gets old. This is rare for me, but I actually wrote a pretty lengthy review for this one over on Letterboxd. Should tell you all you need to know about how much I love this movie, and I don't feel like repeating myself, so if you want to read that, go check it out. But yeah, I love this movie, and like I said over there, I will forever be mystified by this movie's magic. Then I rewatched Yojimbo. This has always been the one Kurosawa film that didn't hit it out of the park for me, but finally giving it a rewatch, I get it. I will say it's still not one of my favorite Kurosawa films. I much prefer his more dramatic and sprawling samurai war films. This feels pretty small-scaled next to those others. But I gotta say, this is too fun to call it a bad movie. Toshiro Mifune is going full cool guy mode here. Hard not to smile at that performance. I gotta say, this probably hit particularly hard because earlier that day I did finish playing Ghost of Tsushima. It's a fantastic experience, and I recommend you do the same. Then I watched The French Connection. What a crazy movie. Still hits the same today, have to say. Ridiculous amount of energy buzzing off of this thing. They're actually doing things here with the camera that most probably couldn't get away with these days. Honestly, one of my favorite Gene Hackman performances as well. He plays a perfect slime ball. I'm pretty sure I left my body during the main chase sequence. I got very few things to say about The French Connection that haven't already been said. It's one you gotta see to believe. In the business, we call this a timeless heater. Then I rewatched Midnight Cowboy. Dude, I really love this movie. In a way not unlike The Swimmer, this does an excellent job at depicting fantasy and delusion on screen. Dustin Hoffman is good and great, obviously, but I do think Jon Voight is specifically incredible here. The way he struts through the screen, you just can't take your eyes off of him. It's a really bizarre film that starts in a weird, foggy place that only gets more depressing the longer it goes on, but I wouldn't even call this a bummer. The filmmaking is so odd and spacey, no wonder it's been stuck in my head since the first time I saw it. And I watched Grizzly Man, and holy hell. So similar to Gumo, this is one that I've been afraid of for years just because I didn't know how much I was going to see or hear in the film. Turns out, it is safe to watch if you're in the same boat as me, but I will say it's still incredibly eerie and I'll say it, sad. Werner Herzog getting the opportunity to make a documentary about a subject like this is kind of a lightning in a bottle situation. Talk about the most perfect pair of all time. This does dive into every nook and cranny of the situation, the people within his life, the aftermath of the attack, the backstory. But Herzog unsurprisingly goes a lot deeper with it through his beautiful narration, exploring the existentialist motives of Treadwell and the violent yet mysterious nature of the wilderness. It's really one of the most fascinating docs I've ever seen. Very strange stuff, very weird people. I really loved it. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. Then I went to the Toronto International Film Festival. Hopefully I can go a bit more in depth on the following films at some point in the near future, but here are some quick thoughts on each of them for now. I watched Surat, a dark techno thriller that takes place in the desert that left me completely hollowed out by the end. It's one I cannot stop thinking about. Some have called it empty. To me, it's sort of a film about losing meaning in life and what that can look and feel like. Pretty intense and incredible. I watched The Testament of Anne Lee. Amanda Seyfried is the easy standout here in what is a very bizarre period piece, musical, drama, thriller, religious thing. Feels dismissive to call this a better Amelia Perez and how it plays with the genre, but that's kind of what it is to me. Every bit of this is carefully constructed. It's a gorgeously looking and sounding film. I walked away a bit number than I should have been, though. I hope I like it a bit more on a rewatch. I watched Wake Up Dead Man, the latest Knives Out, and it's a good time. The same sharp, witty screenwriting you've come to expect from these films is very much here. Josh O'Connor gets a lot of screen time and makes the most of it. Better than Glass Onion, not as compelling as the original, goes a bit deeper than I thought it would. I watched Dead Man's Wire, the new Gus Van Sant, that I was super into. Pretty small next to a lot of what I saw here. You might even call it a bit forgettable, but at the same time, I would say this is one of the better true crime films I've seen in recent years. It's kind of refreshing to see someone who's really good at what he does tackle one of these kinds of stories instead of the usual Netflix slop you're used to. I watched Rental Family, the crowd-pleasy Brendan Fraser in Japan movie. I could kind of see exactly where this was going right from the start, which is to say I wasn't particularly moved by the drama here, but I did find it to be a lot funnier than I was expecting it to be. Instant airplane classic. I also watched Nino, one of my highlights from the fest, a small yet incredibly tender film about a young man who only has a certain amount of time left to live. Theodore Pellerin delivers an incredible performance, and for a film about death, I found it weirdly uplifting. You'll hear me talk about this one quite a bit before the end of the year, so I will leave it there. I watched The Balloonist, which was a pretty standard Talking Heads documentary about two guys who fly a hot air balloon across the globe. It's an undeniably fascinating story and is pretty riveting, but it did fall a bit flat. Something like this should be way more interesting. I also watched The Smashing Machine. Full review for this one is coming this week, but I liked this more than most people. It's not what you'd expect from a Safdie brother, but it's still very much in line with the themes they've been tackling their whole career. The Rock is definitely getting nominated, by the way. I also watched Frankenstein. This is very middle of the road Guillermo del Toro, which is to say, still better looking and sounding than most of what's coming out today. It does feel a bit like he's on autopilot for the first half, but it really comes alive in the second half. I didn't mean to do that. Jacob Elordi is phenomenal. More on this later. I watched Dust Bunny, which was my least favorite film I saw at TIFF. Quirky and twee in a way that really did not work for me at all. It probably will work on a younger generation. Anyone who's like obsessed with Mad Mikkelsen will probably get a kick out of it, but I was bored out of my mind. I also watched Ballad of a Small Player, a pretty disappointing Conclave follow-up from Edward Berger. Gotta admit, this thing is shockingly empty and really made me realize without a good script, Berger's style leaves a lot to be desired. That said, Colin Farrell is really going for it in a way that is hard not to enjoy, and this is also arguably one of the best-looking movies I've seen all year. Phenomenal cinematography, if nothing else. And I finished the fest with No Other Choice, Park Chan-wook's latest banger. This thing is silly. It honestly reminded me a lot of the classic Billy Wilder films. But that's not to say it doesn't have Park's usual bite to it. Based on the posters and premise, I was a little afraid this would come off like a Parasite ripoff in its social commentary, but this is very much a Park Chan-wook film at the end of the day. It surprised me every turn it took. Again, you'll be hearing way more about this one somewhere down the line. Then I got home and I watched Hardboiled. I caught this one in theaters and I'm not sure I'd want it any other way. This is arguably John Woo's most iconic film. It's largely considered one of the greatest and most influential action films of all time, and I figured out why pretty quickly. This thing is pulsing with energy from front to back. Even the more laid back scenes are full of personality. Truthfully though, I would say the final sequence is what makes this. I was not aware this many gunshots and this much fire could exist in a single sequence. I had an absurdly good time watching this and realized I really need to watch the rest of his filmography soon. Then I watched Encounters at the End of the World. After loving Grizzly Man, I did have to hop into some more Werner Herzog, and the Antarctica one was calling my name for whatever reason. While this may not be as focused as Grizzly Man, it is equally as existential. I intended to just have this on in the background, but ended up getting so hooked and could not look away. It's both really fascinating, beautiful, and surprisingly funny at times. It's also free to watch on YouTube. I watched Vanilla Sky. I'll be honest, I was not as into this one as I expected to be. Really thought the weird Tom Cruise mindfuck movie out of the early 2000s would hit it out of the park for me, but I thought a lot of this was pretty clunky and borderline annoying. Tom Cruise specifically, who I'm always defending, at least on screen, even if this reads like a pretty personal and raw film for him, he's pretty unlikable here. He comes off like a walking mess in the worst way. That said, as much as this didn't work for me, I still kind of appreciate this for what it is. Like from afar, it is a pretty fun concept, and when it occasionally leans into the heavier psychological moments, it gets pretty nightmarish. I mean, the editing in this is pretty impressive. I can see this one hitting harder on a rewatch someday. Still would call it worth seeing if you're curious. But yeah, bit disappointing, bit of a mixed bag. Then I watched Him. Yeah, I already talked about this one, but I'm not crazy about it. Probably the biggest disappointment of the year, I gotta say, and there have been some real stinkers. It just could have been so much cooler and so much meatier. But it's just a long music video. Then I watched The Long Walk, and god damn it, another disappointment. As you probably know, I'm a huge David Johnson and Cooper Hoffman guy. They're both at the top of my guys to watch list. And don't get me wrong, you do get to see them act a whole lot in this movie, so this isn't a total dud. But I found the screenplay of this to be really dull and at times painfully cheesy. The film seems aware that to make up for the predictability of this plot, it needs to add substance in the dialogue. But I found a lot of the conversations here really surface level in force. The premise is really interesting and had the potential to go to some seriously dark places, but it kind of just spins in circles the entire time. It is very much a they don't make them like they used to type of movie, but in my opinion, this is the kind of melodrama that I am fine leaving in the past. Personally. Then I rewatched Boogie Nights, revisited this obviously in anticipation for One Battle After Another, and damn, I forgot how hard this went. Knowing how much stranger PTA would go down the line, I've always kind of brushed aside early PTA, but he really had the sauce from the beginning, didn't he? I'm just shocked at how much he seems to understand every single character here, for making this at, what, 26? His writing is incredibly nuanced and full of personality right off the bat. I really struggle to say anything about Boogie Nights that hasn't already been said, so I'll just leave it there. One of my favorites of his, though. Definitely his best from that era. Then I watched Look Back. It was cute. It was cute. This is a quaint little animated film from last year that I almost missed, and if you're in the same boat, don't miss it. This is worth a watch alone for the incredibly unique animation style, and on top of that, it works as a nice little love letter to making art, specifically with the people you love. This deals with some big emotions for being just over an hour long, and it succeeds at that. Do check it out. Then I watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid for the broadcast. I watched this in honor of Robert Redford. This is one of his most iconic roles, and damn is this a good ass time. Just two incredibly handsome fellas riding horses and robbing banks. What more could you want? No, really, a good chunk of this really is just them going from point A to point B, but because it not only looks amazing but is also really funny, it kind of works. I'd also argue their constant success really gives them a sort of invincible quality in the film, which makes for certain events in the back half to be pretty jarring. For such a simple film, it's really stuck with me. I don't know what it is about this thing that draws me in, but it might have something to do with how hot they are. I finished the month with one battle after another in VistaVision. You probably know by now that this is quite a special movie. It might just be my favorite of the year. It's both more mature, accessible, and reflective than anything I've seen from PTA, but it's also maybe the most PTA movie he's ever made. It's a total blast from front to back. You barely feel the runtime. I will never understand why the trailers for this were so bad. If you have been on the fence about seeing this because of that, please just go watch it. It's unmissable, in my opinion. I've also been watching Andor still. Because of how busy this month was, I didn't make a ton of progress, but I do promise you I will have a more interesting update once I finish the show. Part of what got in the way was I've also been watching The Pit, which I've been absolutely loving. I didn't know a medical drama could end up being such a comfort watch. I've never really gotten into a show like this. It was never an ER guy, but damn, it goes kind of hard, doesn't it? And you know what? That's what I watched this month. What did you watch? Let me know. Thanks for watching. Go watch these movies and shows and form your own opinions, and if you're looking for something to watch next month, you should check out this week's sponsor, MUBI. MUBI is a curated streaming service, a place to watch beautiful, interesting, and incredible cinema. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there's always something new to discover. With MUBI, each and every film is hand-selected by its team of curators. Discover the best of cinema at your fingertips, streaming anytime, anywhere. I actually watched Blue Sun Palace, which was one of my favorite movies I watched this month, over on MUBI. I'm really glad that I get to bring it up now, as you may have forgotten it because it was at the beginning of the video. It truly is such a great film. It's one of the best directorial debuts I've seen in a while. So confident and so tender and so devastating. I truly cannot recommend it enough. You can try MUBI free for 30 days at mubi.com/Karsten. That's mubi.com/Karsten for a whole month of amazing cinema for free.